Hello everyone, AngryVMX here, and this is a video that yesterday I got the idea to make, and I've been doing a lot of, Twitch streaming, obviously, and one of the things that I've been doing a lot is playing through an entire series, and having said that, there's actually a night of the week where I play through entire series. We've done the World of Mana series, we've done the Saga series, and I just started Suikoden. And there's some other, series that I've kind of played through the entirety of, like fighting game-wise for fighting game night. I might do those. But a lot of people ask me, like, oh, is this one better than that one? What's your ranking of the best and the worst? And, I've said it time and time again on Twitch, like what my feelings on these are, pretty much whenever anybody asks. But I thought it might be fun to make videos, and there is this website called Tier Maker where I could just go ahead and make a tier list. You've probably seen these floating around as memes. So the first series that I decided to tackle the entirety of was the World of Mana. So now keeping in mind when I say every game, I don't mean every single game. There's a few that I didn't play. But just to go over them here... Oh, by the way, this was a giant pain in the ass to set up. Like, to get all these images to show up properly and everything. Like, even the Secret of Mana one is still kind of cut off, and that's bothering me, but whatever. But we have Final Fantasy Adventure for Game Boy. I know it's called World of Mana, but the first game was called Final Fantasy Adventure. In Japan, the series is known as Holy Sword Legend. But when they released it outside of Japan, in America, they saddled it with Final Fantasy Adventure, and in Europe, it was Mystic Quest. And then the second game... and then from on it became Mana. So we have Secret of Mana for the Super Nintendo. I know there's a remaster, but I did not play that. Trials of Mana, also for the Super Nintendo. There was a remake, but I am basing this on the original game because that is what I played. Legend of Mana for PlayStation, which actually just recently got a remaster. The remaster just came out. Like a week ago or something, so that's pretty cool, but I played the PlayStation version. Sword of Mana on the Game Boy Advance, which is actually a remake of Final Fantasy Adventure, just done in the Mana style. Then we have Children of Mana for the DS, and Dawn of Mana for PlayStation 2. So, if you look at the series as being, like Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, because there really are 4 main entries, Holy Sword Legend 1, 2, and 3, and 4. That would be this one, Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, Trials of Mana, and then Dawn of Mana. Legend and Children are like spin-offs, and of course I mentioned that Sword of Mana is a remake, but this is the order they came out in, and this is also the order I played them in, so this is the order I'm going to be tiering them in. That being said, there are a few I didn't play, like Friends of Mana and such. I just wanted to stick to, the ones that were sort of, main entry-ish, even though some of them are spin-offs that had that similar sort of action RPG gameplay. There was a game called Friends of Mana. There's a few others that are, weird browser games and mobile games and whatnot. But, yeah. So, as through the tiers, we got S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. I don't feel compelled to have to use every single one. I'm just going to place them where I feel they are. So there might not be an S tier in one of these videos, or there might not be an F tier in one of these videos, to just explain my feeling. I'm not, when I say a game is an S tier game, I'm sort of comparing it to all of video games, not just the series or just the just the games on that system, but to all of video games. Because I think to truly be an S tier video game, it has to be really something special. And the same goes for F tier. Just because something's the worst in a series does not mean it's an F tier game. So to explain sort of my feeling about what each of these means, it's basically if someone asked you and say, hey, you played this game, should I get it? So the S tier game, the reaction for me is yes, absolutely. You haven't played it yet? Get it now. It's one of the best things ever. You have to get it, A tier is sort of a slightly more subdued reaction, absolutely yes, awesome game, I would get it as soon as you can, right? B tier is sort of the more non-committal sort of response, yeah, you should get that, it's a pretty good game, I enjoyed it, right? C tier. Okay, so now C tier is where it's sort of just like an average sort of like whatever game. And for a C tier game, I would say, well, you know, it had some problems, but it's not completely garbage, you know, like I would say something like, you know, I would try to maybe, you know, maybe get it on sale, like get it on a sale. Don't pay full price for this game, right? The D tier game, I would say, well, I didn't like it, but maybe you should check out like gameplay footage or something and see if it's something you might be into. Whereas F tier is like, no, avoid at all costs, is garbage. All right. And keeping in mind that this is my opinion, and that my opinion is not going to be the same as your opinion, because it is my opinion, it is not your opinion. And if you have a different opinion, that's all well and good, but that does not mean that my opinion is wrong or that your opinion is wrong. They're just different opinions. So let's actually do this. Okay, so Final Fantasy Adventure, I actually played this so many times as a kid, and I'm just going to go ahead and just pop this right in the B tier here. Final Fantasy Adventure is absolutely a B tier game. It could be A tier, but it has like some issues, you know. The good is that it's one of the best games of its style on the Game Boy. Like, you don't get a lot of action RPGs on the Game Boy. It came out well before Link's Awakening. So it was the first sort of like Zelda-ish action RPG. It was the closest thing we had to a Zelda game on the Game Boy, you know. The graphics are really good. The music is excellent. The story's okay. It's nothing amazing, but it does the job. There's some, you know, pretty cool parts to it. The bosses are fun to fight. The issues would basically be with the translation. It's got that very clipped, you know, speaking tones and such, you know. It's all sort of like not very good dialogue, you know, and it's cryptic at times. There is a famous part in the game where you are trapped in a desert area. You can't go south or west because that's like mountains. East is the ocean, and north is poison gas. So you have a few screens to look around in. It's all desert and monsters and stuff, and then there's like a town. And the only hint you get is that one guy tells you you're supposed to find the Medusa's cave, and one guy tells you he'll tell you where Medusa's cave is if you bring him a bag of Fang, which turns out to be a rare drop from a very specific enemy. So you go and you hunt this very specific enemy until it drops Fang, and you bring it to him, and he tells you palm trees and 8. And as a kid, this drove me crazy because I thought 8 palm trees, something like that. There are 3 oases in the desert. He doesn't tell you which one you're looking for, just something. They all have palm trees. None of them have 8 palm trees. I tried everything I can think of to do with the number 8. And my mom back in the day was also playing this game, and she got stuck on the same spot. Eventually, she got to that spot and got stuck there too. So she actually called Square. She called Squaresoft and asked them what the hell. And they said they got so many calls about this. You have to walk around 2 palm trees in a figure 8 pattern. So there's a few moments like that where it's like really cryptic, which I think stops it from being an A tier game. Okay, Secret of Mana. Now, if you guys saw my review of Secret of Mana, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of Secret of Mana. I really don't like it all that much. I never have. So, yeah, the good. There's a lot of good here, though. The graphics are excellent. The soundtrack is impeccable. Well, that's pretty much it. The story isn't very good. It's a lot of like nonsense. It's not translated very well. The gameplay is just not fun. And there's 3 characters, and there is multiplayer. It's the only game on here that has multiplayer, that I think. But it's like, yeah, you could play with 3 people, but nobody wants to play as the main character because he's useless. You want to play as either the girl who has healing magic or the sprite who has attack magic. Magic is everything in this game, and until you get it, it's not a very playable, fun experience. And then when you get it, it is way too easy because magic destroys everything so easily. Even when you run into an enemy that has resistances to every magic type, it's way too easy to just spam spells until it dies. There are some fun parts in the middle, but for the most part, it's just not a lot of fun. So, and it was obviously there's a lot of missing content. It was supposed to be for the CD add-on for the Super Nintendo, which was going to be called PlayStation, ironically, which never came out. So, to me, Secret of Mana is a D tier game. I don't enjoy it. It's not trash, but I definitely did not enjoy it. Okay, so Trials of Mana. And this is the only game I have to mention that was translated by a fan. A person named Neil Corlett translated it. Now, these days you can play an official translation of Trials of Mana in the remake, and you can play an official version of the original Trials of Mana for Nintendo Switch in the Collection of Mana. But as I don't own a Switch, and I wanted to experience the original version anyway, I played the original patched ROM. But that being said, Trials of Mana is better than Secret of Mana in every way that a game can be better. It's better graphics, better music, better gameplay, better balance, better difficulty. Just like everything's good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to put Trials of Mana in the A tier. The only thing that really stops it from being an S tier game is, well, there's two things really. One is that I wound up having a very frustrating experience with Trials of Mana because of the characters I chose. I let my chat pick which characters I would, and they give you no information. They just give you pictures of characters. You need to pick a leader and 2 followers. And they chose Reese as my leader, and then Angela and Hawkeye. And Reese and Hawkeye are very powerful with melee attacks, and they have like some support spells, but they're not really good at magic. And Angela is basically like a black mage. She has a lot of good attacking spells, not very weak physically. I didn't have a healer, and it's the only configuration of 3 characters that you can pick where you never get a healer, and none of them can ever learn healing magic, no matter how you level them up or how you choose their jobs and their progression, because there is sort of a job system in this. So it was very difficult towards the end because I didn't have access to healing magic. The other thing is there's some game-breaking glitches in Trials of Mana that could actually halt progress and make the game unwinnable if you're not aware of them. So that's why it's A tier, not S tier. If those issues were fixed, then it would totally be an S tier game. Okay, so for Legend of Mana, of which you're hearing music from right now, this was actually my favorite one in the series. Legend of Mana on the PlayStation is really, really good. I didn't really hear much about it back in the day. Like, Secret of Mana was like one of those games that everybody talked about. Like, oh, it's so good, it's a classic. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't really like it. Trials of Mana, nobody really knew about it. We knew about it later that there was a Holy Sword Legend 3, or Seiken Densetsu 3 for Super Famicom that was never translated. And we would dick around with like the Japanese ROM and not really know what's going on, but just marvel at the game's graphics. Eventually, Neil Corlett translated it, and it turned out really good. So there's a lot of positive buzz there. Legend of Mana came out, and there was like no buzz around this game. Like, nobody talked about it. I saw a few screenshots in a magazine, but I really knew nothing about it until I played it, and I wound up really liking it. It's very different, and this is the first one that's sort of technically a spin-off. It's still an action RPG, but this one is about reviving the world and creating it through artifacts, and not an overall story, but like a bunch of smaller quests that some of them have arcs, of course, but that you just sort of have to explore and find the quests on your own, and they each have their own little stories and beginnings and endings. The gameplay is really fun. The graphics are gorgeous. The soundtrack's fantastic. But I'm going to put it in A tier. It's also not an S tier game, and I think the only thing that stops it from being S tier is that at times, like Trials of Mana, like Final Fantasy Adventure, it can be extremely cryptic. It's also extremely easy, so there's that too. There's very few parts that offered any kind of actual challenge, no matter what character build you go with. It's just the combat is very, very easy. It's always fun, but it's very easy to play through. There's really no challenge, so that's what stops it from being S tier, I think. Okay, so Sword of Mana was interesting. It was a remake of Final Fantasy Adventure, but with a greatly expanded story. You could play as 2 different characters. So I went into this kind of like excited to try it out because I loved Final Fantasy Adventure as a kid, and I wanted to see this upgraded version of it. And I remember I passed on it at the time when it came out for Game Boy Advance because I was like, oh, it's like Secret of Mana, ew. But then after having played Trials and Legend, I was like, okay, so maybe they got better. They're not making like Secret of Mana. Maybe it's its own thing. So I tried it out for stream, and yeah. So I find this one very difficult to place, but I'm actually going to place it in the D tier. And the reason is because while I was enjoying it quite a lot, I noticed there was an issue with the difficulty. There was no difficulty until I hit a certain dungeon. And then it was incredibly hard. And all of a sudden this game, which I had been breezing through everything, all the bosses were extremely easy. I wasn't running into any sort of challenge. All of a sudden, I was running into a dungeon that was extremely challenging. So I was like, oh, here's the difficulty. And then I hit the boss, which I remember fighting him in the Game Boy version. And he's impossible. I couldn't beat him. And I wound up not finishing the game. I wound up saying, to hell with it. I tried leveling up. And nothing. My weapon could only do like scratch damage to him, like single digits. And no spells worked on him. I looked it up, and they said, well, he just doesn't have a weakness. You know, he doesn't have an elemental weakness. And I'm just like, okay, how do I get past him? And everybody's saying, oh, if you're level whatever, you're fine. And I'm like, I'm past that level, and I'm still, like, not fine. I actually tried cheating. I enabled cheat codes, and I gave myself, like, the highest level and the highest stats and strength and everything, and I did, like, marginally slightly more damage to him. And he wasn't doing any damage to me either, so I was like, after a few minutes, I'm just like, you know, this is just never going to end. This is just really dumb, and is it going to be like this from now on? Why is this game like this? You know, the only reason that it's not F tier is because up until then, it was a competently made game. The graphics are nice. I like the way that they fleshed out the story and expanded it and everything. And the music was good. I just, you know, couldn't finish it. Okay, so now for these last two, we have Children of Mana on the DS and Dawn of Mana on the PlayStation 2. And I had heard only negative things about these two. Like, everybody said these two were really, really bad. So I walked into this like, okay, let's try it. I'm not saying I'm definitely going to play through the whole game, but we'll try it. We'll see how it is, right? So I played Children of Mana, and wouldn't you know it, this game is awesome. Like, I'm actually going to put it in B tier. Yeah, Children of Mana is actually really good. The only issue that stopped it from being in the A tier is the difficulty curve. Like, once again, I keep coming back to difficulty curve. For the most part, this one's a little different. It's sort of like a dungeon crawler, and I really like that aspect of it. I was having a lot of fun, and it started to get more challenging as I went through the game, and I would have to, like, you know, adapt and overcome and level up and such. And then I got to the end, and I was fighting the last boss, and then it was just over, and I was like, whoa, what happened? That was way too easy. I didn't understand. The last few bosses were actually kind of way too easy, but with the very last boss, I was expecting it to go into, like, its second form, and that just never happened. And I'm like, really? That's it? You know? But other than that, I really enjoyed the gameplay. It's a very different experience, Children of Mana. I liked it. So then I went into Dawn of Mana with, like, okay, you know, maybe people just don't know what they're talking about, right? Everybody said Secret of Mana is a classic, and I don't like it. Everybody said Children of Mana was bad, and I liked it. So let's go into Dawn of Mana with, you know, tempered expectations of, you know what, maybe this is going to be really good. This was the series returning on a major console, the last two, you know, being on handhelds. It's on PlayStation 2. And, wow, this game sucks. Like, Dawn of Mana is an F-tier game. I only streamed it once. I played it for like 2 hours, and then I was like, yeah, I'm done with this. This game is just garbage. It plays like a very bad impression of Kingdom Hearts, basically. The controls are abysmal. The camera is a mess. You're constantly being attacked by enemies that pose really no threat. There's this weird sort of physics engine that you need to abuse because your weapons are not going to do any damage to the enemies. You have to, like, get boulders to fall on them and things like that. Leveling up is a nightmare, and then you lose your levels when you move to a new chapter. I wasn't really all that compelled by the story. The only sort of saving grace of Dawn of Mana is that the graphics are pretty good. They hold up pretty well for PlayStation 2. But everything else about it was just really bad. So this is one that the people absolutely got it right. So that's my tier list for the World of Mana series. If I was to put these like in an order of like which one's slightly better, I would kind of do this, because Legend of Mana, it was my favorite, and I think Children of Mana is a little better than Final Fantasy Adventure. And while I don't like Secret of Mana, I was able to at least get through the whole thing, so there's that. So I would definitely put that there. So it would be, you know, top tier Legend of Mana, then Trials of Mana, then Children of Mana, Final Fantasy Adventure, Secret of Mana, Sword of Mana, and then at the very, very bottom, you know, Dawn of Mana, which is just garbage, you know. So no S tier game, unfortunately, in this series, but I think S tier games are rare. You'll see me use the S tier in these videos sparingly. I do plan on doing another one of these videos real soon. I might even record it right after this for, so I might be wearing the same shirt, just so you know. For, actually I won't be, because you know what? I'm going to take a shower, and then I'm going to do the video. But I'm going to do the Saga series, and I have a lot to say about that, because I was planning on going through 8 games, and it didn't work out exactly that way. So we'll be talking about the ones I did go through and where they belong on the tier maker list. So see you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to do a few more of these.